The Christmas lights were still blinking when Richard slid the papers across the table and said, "Just sign, Julia. Let's not make this harder than it already is." I stared at the line with my name on it. The ink pen felt heavier than it should have. Around us, champagne glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly. Someone else pretended not to watch. The music was soft, cheerful, wrong. "Are you sure this is the right place?" I asked quietly. My voice almost disappeared under the noise. Richard smiled, the same calm, controlled smile he used in meetings and interviews. "It's fine. Everyone here already knows. This just saves time." His lawyer, Elaine Frost, stood beside him with her arms crossed. "You wanted it quick," she said. "This is quick." I looked up at her. "I wanted it private." Elaine shrugged. "Life doesn't always give us what we want." Behind her, Christmas lights wrapped around the balcony rail, glowing red and gold. They reflected in the glass walls, multiplying, like I was trapped inside a decoration. I felt like one, too. Something shiny, disposable, already forgotten. "Julia," Richard said, lowering his voice, "don't do this. Don't start crying. People will think I'm the bad guy." I let out a breath that shook. "You are the bad guy," he sighed, impatient. "You're being emotional." I almost laughed at that. Instead, my eyes burned, and the tears came anyway. I heard whispers start. I didn't need to hear the words to know what they were saying. Poor woman. She really thought she belonged here. He's too good for her. Elaine tapped the paper with one manicured nail. "Sign here and here. Initial the bottom." I picked up the pen. My hand trembled just enough for everyone to see. That part wasn't an act. Pain still hurt, even when you were prepared. Richard leaned closer. "You'll be fine. I made sure of it." I looked at him then. Really looked. His tailored suit, his relaxed posture, the confidence of a man who believed the ending was already written. "Did you?" I asked. He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said. I signed. Each stroke of the pen felt like cutting something loose. When I finished, Elaine pulled the papers back, as if she was afraid I might change my mind. "Congratulations," she said dryly. "You're officially done." Richard exhaled, relieved. "Thank you for being reasonable." I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. A few people turned. A few more pretended not to. "That's it?" I asked. "After everything, that's all you have to say?" He checked his watch. "I have a call in 10 minutes. I nodded. "Of course you do." As I walked toward the exit, someone grabbed my arm. It was his mother, Margaret, her eyes glossy with sympathy that came far too late. "I'm so sorry it ended this way," she said. "I always hoped you'd adjust." I gently pulled my arm free. "I did adjust, just not the way you wanted." She didn't understand that either. Outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. I breathed it in like I'd been underwater too long. Behind the glass, the party went on. Laughter, music. Richard already talking to someone new, his hand resting comfortably on their shoulder. I heard footsteps. "Julia, wait!" I turned. Richard stood just inside the doorway. "You don't have to leave like this." "How should I leave?" I asked. "Smiling?" He hesitated. "We had good times." "We had convenient times," I corrected. "For you." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "You didn't have to make a scene." I looked back at the room, at the lights, at the people who had watched me sign my marriage away, like an afterthought. "I didn't," I said. "You did." For a moment, something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe. But it passed quickly. "This is the best outcome," he said. "You know that." I nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." He seemed satisfied with that and went back inside. I stood alone under the Christmas lights strung across the entrance. They hummed softly, warm against the dark. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I didn't look at it yet. I already knew who it was from. People thought that night was my ending, that I walked away with nothing but tears and embarrassment. They thought my silence meant defeat. They were wrong. I wiped my face, straightened my coat, and stepped into the night, carrying a truth none of them had bothered to ask for. By morning, the story had already decided who I was. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing as I sat at the small kitchen table, staring at a mug of coffee I hadn't touched. I didn't need to open the messages to know what they said. Sympathy, curiosity, judgment disguised as concern. I finally picked it up when my sister's name flashed across the screen. "Julia," she said the moment I answered. "Why didn't you call me last night?" "I was busy," I said. "Busy getting divorced at a Christmas party?" Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea how that looks?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's why he did it there." She was quiet for a beat. "Everyone's talking." "I know. They're saying you walked away with nothing." I stared at the divorce papers folded neatly beside me. "Did they say that like it was sad or deserved?" She didn't answer right away. That told me everything. After I hung up, I opened my email. There it was, an article already circulating. Richard Hale finalizes divorce quietly before the holidays. The photo was cropped carefully, him smiling, me blurred in the background, head down, pen in hand, quietly. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. A knock came at the door, 3 quick taps, controlled. I knew who it was before I opened it. "Elaine," I said. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited. "I thought it would be best to talk in person." "Did you?" I asked. "Or did Richard send you to make sure I stay quiet?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You signed the agreement willingly." "I signed it," I said. "Let's not rewrite the scene." She glanced around my apartment, taking in the modest furniture, the plain walls. "This place suits you," she said. "Simple, manageable." I smiled faintly. "You always confuse simplicity with weakness." She ignored that. "Richard is prepared to be generous if you don't complicate things." "Generous," I repeated. "With what?" Her eyes flickered for half a second. "With what he built." I leaned against the counter. "And what if I don't agree with that version?" Elaine's tone sharpened. "Julia, don't do this. You had a lifestyle because of him." "That's the truth." "That's the version you want," I said. "It's not the only one." She straightened. "If you're thinking of challenging the settlement..." "I'm thinking of drinking my coffee," I interrupted, "and asking you to leave." She studied me, suspicious now. "You didn't even read the fine print, did you?" "I read it," I said. "Every word." "And you're still calm." I met her gaze. "You should worry when I stop being calm." Elaine left without another word. Later that afternoon, Lydia arrived. She didn't knock loudly. She never did. She stood in my doorway with a stack of folders and tired eyes. "Tell me everything," she said. I sat across from her, hands wrapped around my mug. "What version do you want?" "The real one," she said. "I signed the papers," I said, publicly. "I cried. Everyone saw." "And privately?" I looked at her. "Privately, I waited." "For what?" "For them to feel comfortable." She nodded slowly. They always overplay their hand when they think they've already won. You think I should fight? I asked. I think you already decided, she said. You just haven't told me how. I didn't answer that either. That night, I ran into Richard's friend Marcus at the grocery store. He smiled too wide when he saw me. Julia, he said. Rough timing, huh? It's December, I said. Everything's rough. He chuckled. Richard always said you were sensitive. Richard always talked too much. Marcus leaned closer. You should be grateful. Most women would kill for what you had. What makes you think I wanted it? I asked. He blinked, confused. Didn't you? I paid for my groceries and walked away without answering. By the end of the week, the narrative was solid. I was the woman who married up and fell down. The quiet ex-wife who didn't fight back. The cautionary tale people whispered about over drinks. They liked that version of me. It made them comfortable. At night, when the apartment was silent, my phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. Are they done celebrating? Lydia asked. For now, I said. Good, she replied, because the hearing is coming. I closed my eyes. They think it's just paperwork. They always do. I looked at the papers one more time before putting them away. Let them, I said. I wasn't waiting to heal. What were you waiting for? She asked. I smiled to myself, slow and deliberate. For the room to fill. The courtroom smelled like old paper and certainty. I took my seat at the narrow table beside Lydia, smoothing my hands over my coat so they wouldn't shake. Across the aisle, Richard stood with Elaine and two associates, relaxed, smiling, already greeting people like this was a networking event instead of the final dissection of a marriage. Remember, Lydia whispered, leaning toward me. Answer only what you're asked. I know, I said. You don't need to explain yourself. I won't. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge Calder's face was unreadable, his movements precise. When we sat again, his eyes swept the room once, lingering on Richard a half-second longer than on me. I felt the imbalance immediately. Not hostile, just assumed. Let's proceed, the judge said. Elaine stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward divorce settlement. Both parties have agreed to the terms, and we are here to formalize. I'd like to hear from Mrs. Hale, the judge interrupted. Elaine smiled tightly. Of course. All eyes turned to me. Mrs. Hale, Judge Calder said, do you understand the agreement you signed? Yes, I said. Do you believe it is fair? Lydia shifted slightly, but didn't stop me. Yes, I said again. Richard exhaled, satisfied. Elaine stepped forward. And to confirm, you are not contesting ownership of Hale Industries? No, I said. She raised an eyebrow, almost disappointed. You acknowledge that Mr. Hale built the company independently? I acknowledge that's what he claims, I said. There was a faint ripple in the room. Elaine's smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened. Mrs. Hale, she said, this is a yes or no question. Yes, I said calmly. Richard glanced at me then, confused for just a moment. Before settling back into his chair, Elaine continued, during your marriage, you did not hold an executive role, correct? Correct. You did not contribute capital. Not publicly, I said. Elaine paused. Excuse me? I said correct, I repeated. Judge Calder leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Hale, please keep your answers clear. I am, I said, meeting his gaze. Elaine cleared her throat. Let's move on. Mr. Hale will now testify. Richard stood, buttoning his jacket, confidence radiating off him like heat. Mr. Hale, Elaine said, Can you describe the origins of Hale Industries? Of course, Richard said. I founded it 8 years ago, after a long career in finance. The company grew rapidly due to my leadership and vision. And Mrs. Hale's involvement? He smiled indulgently. Julia was supportive. Emotionally, I kept my eyes on the table. Did she have any ownership stake? Elaine asked. No, Richard said easily. Did she provide funding? No. Did she influence business decisions? No. Elaine nodded. No further questions. Judge Calder turned to Lydia. Cross? Lydia stood. Briefly, Your Honor. She faced Richard. Mr. Hale, you testified that you founded Hale Industries 8 years ago. Is that correct? Yes. And you registered the company under your name? Yes. And you're certain there were no silent partners? Absolutely, he said. Lydia glanced down at her notes. No trusts? No family vehicles? None, Richard said, a touch of irritation creeping in. I built it myself. Understood, Lydia said. No further questions. I heard a few murmurs. People expected more. I could feel it. They wanted drama. A breakdown, an emotional plea. They didn't get one. The judge nodded. Very well. The court clerk stood to submit documents. She was young, nervous, flipping through pages too quickly. Your Honor, she said, these are the corporate filings submitted by the defense. Judge Calder scanned them. Noted. As she turned to place them on the bench, she hesitated. Just for a second. Is something wrong? The judge asked. The clerk frowned. There's a discrepancy in the timestamps. Elaine stiffened. What kind of discrepancy? The formation documents, the clerk said. They're notarized after the listed funding date. Richard laughed lightly. That's normal. Administrative delays happen. The clerk didn't laugh. It's just, the funding appears to predate the company registration. Judge Calder held out his hand. Let me see that. Elaine stepped forward. Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the divorce. Hand it to me, the judge said. Silence fell heavy and sudden. Richard's foot tapped once. He stopped it quickly. Judge Calder studied the page. Mr. Hale, where did the initial capital come from? Richard didn't answer immediately. Personal savings. The judge looked up. Documented where? Richard glanced at Elaine. She stepped in. Your Honor, this line of questioning exceeds... I'll decide that, Judge Calder said. Answer the question, Mr. Hale. Richard cleared his throat. From family investments. I finally looked up. Judge Calder noticed. Mrs. Hale, he said slowly, do you wish to add something? I shook my head. Not yet. Richard turned fully toward me now, his confidence cracking just enough for me to see it. The judge leaned back in his chair. We'll take a brief recess, he said. I want clarification. The gavel struck. As people stood, whispers erupted. Lydia leaned close. You're sure about this? She asked. Yes, I said quietly. Across the room, Richard stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I met his gaze and said nothing. The room was finally full. The recess felt longer than it was. People clustered in tight circles, whispering behind hands and folders. I stayed seated, my posture still, my eyes forward. Lydia pretended to review notes, but I could feel her watching me. You could stop this, she murmured. Right now. I know, I said. Once we resume, it won't stay controlled. That's the point. Across the room, Richard stood with Elaine and Marcus. Elaine's hands moved sharply as she spoke. Marcus nodded too much. Richard wasn't talking at all. His jaw was tight, his confidence thinning like ice under pressure. "Mrs. Hale," a voice said. I turned. The court clerk stood a few feet away, papers clutched to her chest. Up close, she looked even younger. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "If I made a mistake—" "You didn't," I said. "You noticed." She swallowed. I wasn't sure if I should have said anything. "You should always say something," I told her, "especially when it doesn't line up." Her shoulders eased a little. The judge asked me to prepare additional records. "Good," I said. She hesitated. "They go back a long way." I nodded. "I know." The bailiff called us back to our seats. Judge Calder returned, his expression more focused now, the casual assumption gone. "Mr. Hale," he said, once we were settled, "before we proceed, I need clarity regarding the source of Hale Industries' initial capital." Elaine stood immediately. "Your Honor, we maintain that this is outside the scope of—" "I asked him," the judge said calmly. Richard rose. "Your Honor, the funds came from family accounts, a combination of personal savings and informal loans." "Informal?" the judge repeated. "From whom?" "My brother," Richard said, gesturing slightly toward Marcus. "And a private family trust." I felt Lydia tense beside me. "Which trust?" Judge Calder asked. Richard hesitated, just a beat too long. "The Hale Family Trust." The judge looked down at the file again. "That trust shows no disbursements during the period you referenced." Elaine stepped in. "Your Honor, there are secondary vehicles." "Then list them," the judge said. Elaine's lips pressed together. "We can submit supplemental documentation." "Today," Judge Calder said. A murmur spread through the room. Richard cleared his throat. "This is unnecessary." "Is it?" the judge asked. "Because according to these records, the first capital injection came from an entity not disclosed here." Elaine's voice sharpened. "Which entity?" Judge Calder looked up. "A trust registered under a different surname." The room went still. Richard's eyes flicked to me. I didn't move. "What surname?" Elaine asked. Judge Calder glanced at the clerk. "Read it." The clerk stood, voice shaking. "The Avery Trust." Elaine laughed once. "Your Honor, that's irrelevant. Mrs. Hale's maiden name has no bearing on—" "Sit down," Judge Calder said. Elaine froze. Then she sat. Judge Calder turned to me. "Mrs. Hale, you said earlier you were not contesting ownership. Is that still your position?" "Yes," I said. "Then explain this." I stood slowly. Every sound felt louder. My heels against the floor, the rustle of fabric. I kept my voice steady. "I'm not contesting ownership," I said. "I'm confirming it." Richard shook his head. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" I asked, turning to him. "You said you built it yourself." "I did," he snapped. "With my money." "With money that came from a trust," I said. "A trust you didn't name." "That trust has nothing to do with you anymore," Elaine said quickly. Judge Calder raised a hand. "Mrs. Hale, answer only what you can verify." I nodded. "The Avery Trust funded the company before it was registered. The funds were transferred under my authorization." Elaine stood again. "Objection. This is self-serving testimony." Judge Calder didn't look at her. "Do you have proof, Mrs. Hale?" "Yes," I said. Richard laughed, brittle and forced. "You expect us to believe you secretly bankrolled a company you didn't even work for?" "I expect you to believe the documents," I said. The clerk handed a folder to the judge. He flipped through it slowly. Too slowly for Richard. "This doesn't change anything," Richard said. "Even if she helped early on, the company is mine now." Judge Calder looked up. That depends. On what? Richard demanded. On whether you misrepresented ownership during the marriage, the judge said, and during this proceeding. Elaine leaned toward Richard, whispering urgently. He pulled away from her. This is a misunderstanding, he said. Julia knew what she was doing. I met his eyes. Did I? His voice softened. You trusted me. I trusted the structure, I said. Not you. The judge closed the folder. We are no longer finalizing paperwork today. Elaine's head snapped up. Your Honor, we are reopening review, Judge Calder said, and I am ordering full disclosure of all trusts, shell entities, and capital transfers related to Hale Industries. Gasps broke out. Someone dropped a pen. Richard stared at me, his face pale now. You planned this. I shook my head. I waited. Judge Calder struck the gavel. Court is adjourned until further notice. As people stood, chaos followed. Elaine argued. Marcus cursed under his breath. Reporters rushed forward. Richard grabbed my arm. You think you've won? I pulled free. No, I said. I think you finally understand what you signed away. For the first time since the Christmas party, Richard looked afraid. And I still hadn't told them everything. The hallway outside the courtroom felt narrower than before, like the walls had leaned in to listen. Richard paced near the windows, his phone pressed to his ear. No, she's bluffing, he said sharply. She always was dramatic. I stopped a few steps away. If I were bluffing, I said, you wouldn't be calling anyone. He turned, eyes flashing. You lied to me. I didn't, I said. You just never asked the right questions. Elaine approached, her face tight. This ends now. You've made your point. I haven't, I said. She scoffed. You think a trust gives you control? Richard built that company. With my authorization, I said, before you ever showed up. Elaine looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. You expect us to believe you were some silent architect? I expect you to believe records? I said again. They don't get emotional. Richard stepped closer. You let me think. I let you think what you needed to, I said. You were happier that way. His voice dropped. You married me under false pretenses. I almost smiled. You married me without reading the fine print? Lydia cleared her throat beside me. Judge Calder will want full disclosure, not just the trust. Richard's shoulders stiffened. What else is there? I looked at him. Really looked. The man who had assumed my quiet was ignorance. You never wondered why my last name disappeared? He frowned. You took mine. I simplified, I said. People listen better when they think they understand you. Elaine crossed her arms. Enough riddles. Fine, I said. Before I met Richard, I was an Avery. Richard blinked. So? So the Avery Trust predates Hale Industries by 40 years, I said. And it doesn't answer to anyone in this hallway. Elaine opened her mouth, then closed it. Marcus stepped forward. You're saying your family funded him? I'm saying my family structured the capital, I said. Richard signed what was put in front of him. Richard laughed, hollow. You expect me to believe you were running things behind my back? I wasn't running anything, I said. I was protecting it. Lydia leaned toward the three of them. You might want to consider cooperation. Elaine shook her head. This is absurd. Is it? Lydia asked, because the judge didn't seem amused. Richard dragged a hand down his face. Why now? He demanded. Why humiliate me? I didn't, I said quietly. You did. At the Christmas party. His jaw tightened. You signed. Yes, I said, because I knew what signing would make you careless. He stared at me, stunned. You planned to destroy me. No, I said. I planned to let the truth speak when it mattered. We were interrupted by the clerk again. She hovered awkwardly, eyes darting between us. Judge Calder asked for Mrs. Hale. Of course he did, Elaine muttered. Inside chambers, the air felt heavier. Judge Calder sat behind his desk, hands folded. He gestured for me to sit. Mrs. Hale, he said, you've been, selective. Yes, I said, because timing matters. He studied me. Why didn't you disclose this earlier? Because it wouldn't have been heard, I said. Not until the narrative cracked. He nodded slowly. You understand the seriousness of misrepresentation? I do, I said. That's why I never misrepresented anything. He raised an eyebrow. You let your husband testify falsely. I let him speak, I said. He chose the lie. The judge leaned back. And the trust? I'm a beneficiary, I said, not the controller. But you authorized the transfer. Yes. Why? Because Richard needed capital, I said. And I believed in the structure, not the man. Judge Calder was quiet for a long moment. You could have stopped this divorce. Yes, I said. But then he'd never reveal himself. The judge sighed. This case just became much larger. I know, I said. Outside, Richard waited. He searched my face, as if trying to find the woman he thought he knew. You could have told me, he said. I told you, I replied. You just weren't listening. Elaine pulled him aside, whispering urgently. I watched them, strangely detached. The fear in his posture was new. So was the respect in hers. Lydia touched my arm. You okay? Yes, I said. This is who I was before him. Richard turned back to me one last time. You never needed me. I met his gaze. That's the part you'll never forgive. As we walked away, I felt the shift settle fully into place. The story they wanted was gone, and the truth had finally learned how to speak. The second hearing didn't feel like the first. This time, when I walked into the courtroom, heads turned without pretending not to. The whispers weren't pity anymore. They were calculation. Richard stood straighter than he had days ago, but the effort showed. Elaine was already rifling through folders. Her confidence sharpened into aggression. Marcus sat behind them, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the door like he was waiting for an exit that hadn't been built yet. Lydia leaned toward me. They're scared, she said quietly. They should be, I replied. Judge Calder entered, and the room settled faster than before. We are resuming the matter of Hale versus Hale, he said. Full disclosure has been ordered. I expect direct answers. Elaine stood immediately. Your Honor, before we proceed, we'd like to clarify that any early funding... Sit, the judge said. Elaine sat. Judge Calder turned to the witness stand. Mr. Collins, please take the stand. A man I recognized but hadn't seen in years stepped forward. The former CFO, thinner now, older. His eyes flicked to Richard, then away. Richard stiffened. What is he doing here? Lydia stood. Mr. Collins managed Hale Industries' finances during its formation. Elaine objected. This is harassment. Overruled, Judge Calder said. Proceed. Mr. Collins raised his hand, swore the oath, and sat. Mr. Collins, Lydia said, were you present when the first capital transfer was executed? Yes, he said. And who authorized it? He hesitated. Judge Calder leaned forward. Answer the question. Julia Avery, he said. Now Julia Hale. The room reacted all at once. Gasps, shifting chairs. A low, collective inhale. Richard stood abruptly. "That's a lie." Mr. Collins flinched. "It's not." Elaine jumped in. "You were fired under questionable circumstances, Mr. Collins. Your credibility." "I resigned," he said, "because I didn't like lying." Richard turned to the judge. "You can't take this seriously." Judge Calder's voice hardened. "Sit down." Richard sat. Lydia continued. "Did Mr. Hale have unrestricted access to those funds?" "No," Mr. Collins said. "They were conditional." "Conditional how?" "They were structured through the Avery Trust," he said. "Performance-based. Oversight was required." Elaine's voice rose. "Oversight by whom?" Mr. Collins looked at me. "By her." Silence stretched. I felt it press against my ribs, heavy but steady. Richard shook his head. "You're twisting this." I spoke before Lydia could. "You signed the oversight agreements." "I didn't read them," he snapped. "That doesn't make them disappear," I said. Judge Calder nodded slowly. "Continue." Lydia asked, "Did Mr. Hale ever violate the conditions?" "Yes," Mr. Collins said. "Multiple times." Elaine objected again, louder now. "This is character assassination." "Overruled," the judge said. "Go on." "He diverted funds," Mr. Collins said. "Moved them without authorization." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "That's my company." "It wasn't," Mr. Collins said quietly. "Not entirely." The judge turned to Richard. "Did you disclose these conditions during your testimony?" Richard didn't answer. "Mr. Hale," the judge said, "did you?" Elaine whispered urgently, but Richard pulled away. "No," he said. The admission landed harder than any accusation. Judge Calder exhaled. "Thank you, Mr. Collins. You may step down." As the witness left, Richard finally looked at me, not with anger, not with disbelief, but with something closer to panic. "You could have stopped him," Richard said. "You let him talk." "I let him tell the truth," I said, "just like you did." Elaine turned to me, eyes sharp. "You orchestrated this." "No," I said. "I waited for the consequences." Judge Calder addressed the room. "It is clear that material facts were omitted." Richard stood again. "This is a misunderstanding." "A pattern," the judge corrected. Marcus leaned toward Richard, whispering harshly. Richard shoved his chair back. "This isn't over," Richard said, pointing at me. "You think you've won because you embarrassed me?" I met his gaze. "I think you lost the moment you assumed I couldn't." Judge Calder struck the gavel. "Enough. Based on testimony and evidence, the court will reassess asset division and potential misrepresentation." Elaine's face went pale. "Your Honor." "I'm also referring this matter for further review," Judge Calder said, "including possible fraud." The word hung in the air like smoke. Richard stared at the bench, unmoving. As the court adjourned, Lydia leaned close. "That was the shift." I nodded. I felt it. Richard caught up to me near the doors. His voice dropped. "What do you want?" I stopped walking. "The truth." He laughed weakly. "You already have it." "No," I said. "I have leverage." His face hardened. "Do you think this makes you powerful?" I looked at him, calm and unflinching. "No, it reminds me I always was." I walked past him without waiting for a response. Behind me, Richard stood alone, finally understanding that the room no longer belonged to him. Chapter 7. Regret is not an apology. 850 words. By the time the third hearing was scheduled, Richard stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. The hallway outside the courtroom buzzed with reporters and lawyers who suddenly cared about a divorce they'd ignored weeks ago. When I walked past them, microphones lifted, questions spilled out, Names I hadn't heard spoken aloud in years floated through the air. Mrs. Hale, Avery, do you have a statement? I didn't slow down. Inside, Richard sat alone at the table. Elaine was late. Marcus wasn't there at all. The empty chairs said more than any headline. He looked up when I took my seat across the aisle. His eyes were tired now, red at the edges. He didn't look powerful. He looked exposed. Julia, he said quietly. I didn't answer. Judge Calder entered, and the room snapped to attention. This time, when he spoke, there was no small talk. Mr. Hale, the judge said, before we proceed, I want to be clear. You are under oath. Again. Richard swallowed. I understand. Elaine rushed in, breathless, and sat beside him. She didn't look at me. Your Honor, she began, we would like to submit a revised statement, acknowledging... Sit, Judge Calder said. Elaine sat. The judge turned to Richard. You withheld material information. You misrepresented ownership, and you allowed false testimony. Richard's voice shook. I made mistakes. Mistakes imply accident, the judge said. This was deliberate. Richard glanced at me. I didn't think she'd do this. Judge Calder raised an eyebrow. Do what, exactly? Fight, Richard said. She never did before. I felt the weight of that sentence settle in my chest. Lydia stood. Your Honor, we are requesting a revised asset division based on substantiated ownership and oversight. Elaine stood again. We object to the characterization of oversight as control. Judge Calder ignored her. Mr. Hale, is there anything you wish to say before I rule? Richard stood slowly. He didn't look at the judge. He looked at me. I loved you, he said. The room held its breath. You loved what I made possible, I said. There's a difference. He shook his head. You never trusted me. I trusted the system, I said. You exploited it. Elaine whispered urgently. Richard, stop. He didn't. You could have forgiven me. I tilted my head. For what? Being exactly who you always were? His voice cracked. I'm sorry. The word landed between us, small and insufficient. Judge Calder cleared his throat. Mr. Hale, this court does not adjudicate feelings. It adjudicates facts. Richard turned back to the bench, defeated. I have nothing further. The judge nodded once. Based on the evidence, testimony, and verified records, this court finds that Mrs. Braun, Mong Hale, Avery, maintained a controlling financial interest through the Avery Trust. Elaine's shoulders slumped. Accordingly, the judge continued, the previous settlement is void. Assets will be reallocated. Mr. Hale will relinquish controlling interest. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Richard closed his eyes. Judge Calder wasn't finished. Additionally, due to intentional misrepresentation, this court recommends further review by appropriate authorities. Elaine stood in panic. Your Honor, I'm done, Judge Calder said. He struck the gavel. This court is adjourned. For a moment, no one moved. Then the noise erupted. Reporters surged forward. Lawyers whispered frantically. Someone called Richard's name. He didn't respond. I stood, my legs steady, my breath even. Richard reached for me as I passed. Julia, please. I stopped. I didn't turn. You won, he said hoarsely. Isn't that enough? I faced him then. Up close, he looked smaller, not physically, internally. I didn't come here to win, I said. I came here to be done. He laughed bitterly. You think this ends it? For me? I said. Yes. Elaine touched his arm, but he shrugged her off. I would have changed, he said, if you'd given me time. I met his eyes, calm and final. Regret isn't change. It's just fear showing up late. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. I walked past him, past the cameras, past the version of myself he thought he owned. Outside, the air felt lighter, not joyful, just clear. Lydia joined me on the steps. "You okay?" "Yes," I said. And this time, it was true. Behind us, Richard stood frozen in the doorway of the courthouse, watching the world move on without him. For the first time, he understood something I'd known for a long time. An apology doesn't undo a choice, and love doesn't excuse a lie. The Christmas lights were still there when I walked past the building again. Different year, same street. The decorations had been taken down and put back up, like nothing meaningful had ever happened beneath them. I stopped across from the glass entrance, hands in my coat pockets, and watched people come and go. No one recognized me now. That was the strange part. I was finally visible and invisible at the same time. My phone buzzed. "It's done," Lydia said. "The final filings went through this morning." I closed my eyes. "No appeals?" "None that will matter," she replied. "He doesn't have the ground." I exhaled slowly. "Thank you." "You don't owe me anything," she said. "You did the hardest part." After I hung up, I stood there a moment longer, letting the cold settle into my bones. There was no rush anymore, no court dates, no rooms waiting to decide who I was. I remembered the night I'd signed the papers inside that building, the music, the smiles, Richard's certainty. Everyone thinking my life was ending because I didn't argue. They never understood silence. I heard footsteps behind me. "Julia," I turned. Richard stood a few feet away, hands shoved into his coat pockets. No suit this time, no entourage, just him. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said. "I didn't know if I would," I replied. He nodded, eyes fixed on the building. "They froze my accounts." "I know. They're restructuring the board." "I know." He laughed softly. "You always did." We stood in silence for a moment. It wasn't awkward, just final. "I lost everything," he said. I looked at him. "You lost what you took for granted." He swallowed. "I thought winning meant owning the room." "It does," I said, "until the room realizes you don't belong." He looked at me then, really looked. "You never needed me." "No," I said gently, "but I wanted to believe you were safe." "I could be," he said quickly. "I could still be." I shook my head. "That's not how trust works." His shoulders sagged. "I miss you." I didn't answer right away. Then honestly, I miss who I thought you were. That seemed to hurt more than anger would have. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "I know," I said, "but we're past apologies." He nodded, accepting it at last. "Take care of yourself, Julia." "I am," I said. He hesitated, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. No cameras followed him now. No one was waiting to hear what he had to say. I watched until he was gone. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment. A different one now. Still simple, still quiet. I poured a glass of wine and didn't toast anything. I didn't need to mark the moment. It had already passed. My phone buzzed again. A message from my sister. "I'm proud of you." I smiled and typed back, "I'm proud of me too." I thought about everything that had brought me here. The trust my father built quietly. The systems I learned to respect. The way power didn't always announce itself. I never wanted revenge. I wanted balance. I wanted the truth to have space, to stand without being shouted down. That was the part people misunderstood. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with documents, testimony, patience. It arrived because I waited until the noise worked against itself. I finished my wine and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere, someone was celebrating. Somewhere else, someone was losing something they thought was permanent. Life went on. The next morning, I packed away the last folder from the case. I didn't shred it. I didn't burn it. I just put it where it belonged. Closed, complete, done. As I turned off the light, I thought of that first night again. The Christmas lights, the pin, the tears everyone saw. They thought that was my ending. They were wrong. It was just the moment the story stopped belonging to them. And for the first time in a long while, the silence felt like peace.